Good morning and welcome to our Flowerside chat. We're going to talk through the events of STPR, doing things a little different. Our truck is too loud to record on the way home. And so we thought we'd just have a sit down chat with you guys. Let's get right into it. We'll start with things that kind of happened on the way down.
Yeah, so this whole event was kind of a mess from the get-go. On the way there, our truck stopped boosting on us, so we ran into some issues with that. Ended up having to drive a pretty long distance with no boost through construction and Indianapolis. Not my favorite city to drive through. But that's not the only thing that happened. Shortly after it stopped boosting, we pulled off to check it out, and one of the trailer tires blew out on us. So we swapped that with the spare and continued on our way, and ended up finally getting in to Wellsboro, about 1 a.m.?
Yeah, I think it was about 1 a.m. We ended up having to stop and get the part for the truck and somehow got that fixed. And yeah, got in about 1 a.m. despite some fog and rain and it being kind of sketchy to drive in. So we did prearrange registration for like 5 a.m. So the next day before reconnaissance, we had to get up like super early after just a few hours of sleep and get up and get registered. So thanks to the organizers for doing that for us. And so, yeah, we got up early, headed out to reconnaissance, and recce was great. I mean,
it went pretty well. It was our first time doing recce with the big dually truck, so that was interesting with some of the narrow roads. We had to make a couple multi-point turns to get around some of those sharp ones uphill. It was very muddy, very rainy out. I think it rained just throughout the day as we were doing recce, so
yeah.
That made things a bit more challenging as well. We didn't write our own notes for this event. They had two-day open recce, but we only made it for the first day, so we just ran off Jimbas and made some adjustments to those with one pass.
I did share where we were at on reconnaissance. I did share the video. Calvin did an interview with Mike Shaw for the ARA. Yep. So that's up on our page. You can check that out. That's on our Facebook page. He did an interview with Mike. And so after we got back from reconnaissance...
So the night before, we got in pretty late. We just kind of parked the trailer out there, and we've got a pretty large trailer. But we got back from reconnaissance and got the truck hooked back up and went to move it, and immediately got stuck in the mud there at the fairgrounds. Yeah. So the trailer was stuck, the truck was stuck, and we weren't really going anywhere. So after a few attempts and a little bit of help from people, it still remained stuck. We just decided that's where we were going to camp for the weekend and left the trailer there. We did get the truck unhooked and the truck out, but the trailer was firmly stuck in the mud. So once that was dealt with, our crew had shown up. We had gotten our suspension that morning, new suspension. We were excited to run that suspension, but it turns out there were a few components on there that weren't quite right, and a few modifications that were going to be necessary to get that installed, which we just really didn't have time for and couldn't make it work. So ultimately we decided to just run our tired K-Sports for the rest of the event, and hopefully that will be the last time we run those K-Sports, because
that has to be the last time we run the K-Sports. They're done.
So as part of getting that suspension in, we didn't actually have time for shakedown.
Yeah, we skipped shakedown and messed with the suspension instead, figured out that wasn't going to work, and so then we had to head right to Park Expose. Park Expose was at the green. It was absolutely gorgeous for a downtown Park Expose. It really was green and beautiful, lots of people.
It's kind of just a big square park, lots of grass, there's a nice fountain there, and they kind of park around the square. So it's really cool. You can kind of just walk around. They got all the cars lined up, and there was a pretty good turnout, fans and all of that. It did run pretty late though. I think it was about 10 o'clock before they started sending the first car. So
yeah,
it kept us there a while. They did send us faster than 1 car per minute though. Once they started sending everybody, it was just a ceremonial start. There was no racing going on that evening, but everyone got their chance to do a quick burnout and go through the big inflatable arch and then basically go back and go to sleep. So
we did our little kind of peel out and then headed back to get a little bit more sleep than we had the night before. that morning we had to get up and we had to head to waste management to actually start the first day of stages. This was a longer day. There were 10 stages that day, and it was 10 stages with some really long transits, which comes into play. So, go ahead.
Yeah, we basically started at the service area. The controls are just right outside service. We got there and it was just a muddy mess. Some teams had to be relocated. We had lakefront property for our service area, and it was quite muddy and very, very soft surface area. But we managed to make it work as best we could. Um, but yeah, pretty much from there, we started with a really, really long transit. It was a 90-minute transit to get to the first stage. The transit took us through some forest roads, and if there's anything you need to know about STPR and their forest roads, the speed limits are 25, and if they catch you speeding, they will fine you. Uh, they're very generous with their fines, it seems. There were a few teams that got some fines during recce. So don't speed through the forest roads here or there in Pennsylvania. Um, but 90-minute transit, we got to the beginning of the first stage and started the first loop, and kind of started off a little slow. The stage was very muddy. This was Lebo 1. The first section, when we recce'd it, I was concerned that it was going to get rutted up, and there were some uphill sections through some very, very soft, muddy stuff.
Yeah.
It turned out it wasn't actually that bad. It was very slick, but we ended up getting a fair amount of traction through it all and made it through. It does open up a little bit, a little more hard-packed surface, less muddy, soft surface, and it gets pretty fun from there. The next stage was actually pretty quick. We've definitely picked up the pace on that stage. Flew through that one.
Yeah, we got more comfortable with the surface by then. But yeah, unfortunately on that stage, started having some issues with fuel cut. There's some bad math on figuring up, I think, our gas mileage and everything with that transit. So we started experiencing some fuel cut, especially on those long right-hand turns.
Yeah, because of the way the fuel tank's set up on long right-hand turns, all the fuel will slosh over at one side of the tank, which is the wrong side of the tank, the pickup for the fuel pumps on the other side. And usually that starts occurring once we start getting a little bit lower on gas. And it started occurring only on the second stage. And then I noticed that we were a bit lower on gas than I had thought we should have been through that stage. So we ran that stage, and by the time we got to the start of the third stage, I realized we were very low on gas and that we were going to have a problem. So we ended up trying to take an easier pace on the third stage, just short shifting up into fifth gear, just trying to sip fuel, get us through the stage, because we still had a long transit to get back. It was 90 minutes out to the first stage and probably 40 minutes back from the third stage. So just kind of sip fuel. Unfortunately, Painter is probably the fastest stage of the whole event. Very, very wide open sections that you can really just carry a lot of speed through, and a lot of it's kind of downhill too, so there's a lot of momentum to carry. So even short shifting in a fifth, we were still topping 80 miles per hour, just taking it easy. But ultimately, I think it worked out for us because we ended up trying to hypermile back to the service area and a few miles from where service actually was, and the check-in was a remote fuel depot, optional refuel depot. And when we pulled into that, the car actually quit on us there as we were out of gas. Unfortunately, there's nobody there with any gas.
Yeah, we were kind of hoping like, oh, someone will be using the remote refuel. Maybe they can give us a little sip of gas. And no one used it except for us. And so we had to call our crew, and Calvin had to give them directions out to the remote refuel so that they could meet us there with gas. And so they did, but by the time they got there and we got fuel in the car and we got to check in, we were 2 minutes late, which cost us about 20 seconds in penalties. But that's way better than like running out of gas on transit or on stage and having to like drop and re-enter or whatever. So it all worked out. That was okay. And so, yeah, we headed into service. Service was normal. We filled the car all the way up, and everything was great. We headed out to do the same loop that we did that morning. So, Lebo, Randall, Painter, I think, again.
Yes.
And so we did the same loop. And this time, since we had gas, we hit a new high score. previously at rallies, I think our top speed, according to our Monit GPS odometer, was 95 miles an hour. I have photos. We did 99 plus. When I looked over at the Speedo, we were doing a little over 100. The Monit is usually just like a hair behind, so it said 99 plus. And so I think it's pretty safe to say we hit 100 miles an hour, which is a new high score for us. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, and there was still a little bit of room to run, but
Yeah.
at those speeds, you gotta have better nerves than what I've got to keep going. But yeah, that was on Painter 2, the second run of Painter, so
Yeah.
lots of very fast speed on that one. Was it Randall was the other one?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was our best time of the weekend. I think we
Yeah.
had our highest place on a stage, somewhere in the high teens. But otherwise, that loop we actually got to run. It was probably the most fun loop we ran all
Yeah.
weekend and the most complete loop due to circumstances. So after that, we transited back to service, and everything was still going great.
Yeah, we serviced the car and then got ready for, there was a loop, it was waste management short to Rattler to waste management 1. And so we got the car prepped for that. We got the light bar on. We ran the waste management short, which was a lot of fun. It was our first taste of the waste management stages.
Yeah, it's a very rough set of stages. The surface is just, there's a lot of bumps and continuous bumps, and our suspension definitely can't keep up with that.
Yeah.
So we started off probably a little hotter than we should have, and started bottoming and bouncing, and had to pull back the pace a bit. Somebody with a better suspension would probably be able to go a lot quicker through there. With what we had, it wasn't quite working out for us, so scaled back the pace, and it was just hard to get comfortable on those stages because there were sections you can go fast on, and there were a lot of sections you couldn't go fast on, and I don't think we really did as good a job on the notes as we could have to indicate those things.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't in our heads when we were doing recce that this is the case. It's more, this is a giant mess, and we just need to get through it, which we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got through it, and at one section there was a kind of giant mud hole pit thing going on, and because we ran this in the evening, we did have our rally lights on, but they were quickly coated in mud.
Yeah, so we went through the like mud pit, and it slung mud even all the way up on our roof. And as we turned on the wipers, but
it was kind of just a blackout. The wipers took a few seconds to catch up. We practically had to stop because I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, and the mud was still coming down from the roof.
Yeah. So in hindsight, maybe we should have just gone around that because it would have taken about the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And we could still see at that point.
Yeah.
But what we figured out is once we finished that stage and we got to Rattler, which was a very fast, very downhill stage at night, and this was definitely at night, rally lights don't work very well when they're coated in mud. So visibility was kind of not great going down that stage.
Yeah, we should have brought a towel or some water, something to clean those lights off, but we didn't. So yeah, I feel like our stage time suffered a little bit because we weren't as confident with what we couldn't see.
Yeah, the visibility was just very limited on a downhill, very fast stage. So we did what we could to get through it and headed back to run waste management again.
Yeah, so waste management short and waste management 1 were the same direction. So we came back and we ran that same direction again. We took it easy over the jumps, and really that stage just took us a while. I think we backed way off knowing our suspension couldn't handle a lot of the ruts and the bumps in its state, and we wanted to preserve the suspension for day 2. So we put down a really slow time there, but all's well that ends well. And so we headed back and tried to get some sleep for day 2. Day 2 was the shorter day. It was only 5 stages.
I think we got our timeline messed up a little bit on day 1 because we did run waste management 3 times. There was the short before second loop of Lebo, so we did run that. And then at night, it was the long version, and then we ran it in reverse after Rattler.
Yeah, and the reverse was a lot smoother, actually, comparatively. It seemed to be a bit smoother, yeah.
Yeah, reverse, when you started further out and ended up finishing inside the complex, seemed smoother, for sure.
Yeah.
But the jump was both ways. There was a jump
Yeah, we didn't, knowing our suspension was kind of already toast. We didn't do a whole lot with the jump, so it was there. We just kind of puttered over it. So yeah, so then we started day two. And so the first stage of day two was ASAF. And that was kind of a decently long transit to get out there. And so that's when the excitement started. So I'll let you.
Yeah, so it had rained overnight after the first day. Everything was really slick out there, lots of water on the road. It was just real misty, a little foggy out, just light fog in the morning on our way out there. But we started ASAF. Roads were very slick. We tried to keep a slower pace through it, but we definitely got caught out at one point. It was a downhill left four, and still going through the video just to figure out whether there was something else going on there, but it seemed like it maybe tightened at the end. I don't really know. But we definitely got offline a little bit, and being that it was downhill and the line was on the inside, and there's a huge crown in the road. If you're on the wrong side of the crown, you don't have much grip. And we ended up on the wrong side of the crown and just kind of understeered out of the turn very slowly. It was all in slow motion and just into a tree.
Yeah, so I just remember I called the lift four. I didn't feel like there was anything off about our speed. We didn't come in too hot. But we definitely got, where the line is, it's swept down to some hard pack stuff. But if you go outside that line, you get into what they kind of call the marbles. And that's all that little, gravel, loose stuff that people have swept to the outside. That's what we got into. Calvin's usually such a careful driver and really good at saving things that I really thought he was just going to save it and we were going to keep going. And I looked over and saw a tree coming at my door and I thought, he's going to save it, right up until the glass, hit me in the face. So I got a glass shower. Calvin climbed out and grabbed the triangle. I gave him our reflective okay sign. And he got out and started putting a triangle out. I was wrestling the triangle out from behind my seat. It was just held in with a bungee strap, but when you're frustrated and your adrenaline is going, your hands don't always work. So by the time I wrestled my triangle out from behind my seat and climbed out of the car, which was not very long at all, Kevin Binkley just magically appeared with his camera. Hey guys, are you okay? And gave us some hugs and held the okay sign for us and took pictures of cars as they went by. So it was kind of awesome and comforting to just have a magical photographer appear out of the woods. And Kevin's an awesome friend, so he took some pictures of our car off and shared the selfie, which was pretty cool of him. And eventually Sweep did come through and got us pulled out. We ended up with a 33-minute stage time for that stage. And we got back on the road.
Yeah, so Sweep came through and was able to pull us out. We got back on the road. He gave us our time card back. We still had time to get to the next check-in, and we kind of just went going down the road. Definitely not at a fast pace, but I had to kind of assess how the car was driving, and it wasn't driving very well. Something was off on the front suspension. The car really couldn't decide whether it wanted to go straight or to the left or the right, but after a little bit of driving, I started feeling a bit more comfortable with how the car was handling, and it felt good enough that we could keep going. So we did. Went through a spectator point, still kicked it sideways a bit,
Yeah.
just because.
I think the spectators were a little confused because the side of our car was totally smashed. But anyway, so we did arrive at the next stage. One thing I want to address, there were a total of 3 red crosses at this event. 1 was on day 1 and 2 on day 2. Ultimately, after getting medical attention, all teams ended up okay. But we're not going to go into detail on that. We feel like it's up to the teams to share what information they would like to. And so when we arrived to the next stage, there was a red cross and cars were backed up. There was some confusion as to where everybody needed to be. But anyway, we arrived at that stage, and because there was a holdup for a red cross, of course, word started getting around that we had an off and our car was smashed. And so people started coming to check out the car. And as soon as they saw the state of the car, they were like, oh, no, you can't have your fender over your wheel. It's going to cut into the tire. Next thing I know, there are people just showing up with like pry bars and logs, and they're like cleaning the mud out from the wheel well and like pulling out our fender for us. It was crazy. They were like, "Oh, you need this? I have this tool." Just there were tools and people coming from everywhere, and they started going to town fixing our car. Which is part of what makes rally so amazing. I mean, these are our fellow competitors, and we're here out in the woods, and they're doing roadside repairs. And honestly, I was just sitting back in awe watching. It was amazing. So yeah, we arrived at the next stage, and there was a big holdup for the Red Cross and a little bit of confusion. But anyway,
Yeah, cars were backed up. We got there, so there was kind of a long delay, and really just had to wait around for some instruction on what to do. Ultimately, we ended up transiting that stage, and they sent us through, and we ended up 2 stages later.
yeah,
I guess what had happened is some of the first cars got through, so they had them transit the next stage, and then everybody who didn't get through transited to the third stage of the loop. So we all kind of ended up on that third stage, and there was a long delay there as some cars got lost.
yeah.
Some cars took a different route than was intended, and so it was really just a bunch of long delays after that. So we had plenty of time to look over our car and figure out what we were going to do.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, ultimately we ended up at the start of Painter South, which was the third running of Painter with a slightly different configuration.
Yeah, so we started Painter South, and about 3 miles in at a chicane, a marshal through the Red Cross. And so we slowed down and continued to transit until we arrived at the last car at the Red Cross. And medical sweep and everything came through to check on those folks. And in order to get out of that stage, we had to turn around, transit back out, and then follow a marshal back to service. Whoever was leading us back got a little bit lost, but eventually we made it back to service. And by that point, everyone was kind of out of order, but we serviced the car, got it figured out. So while we were stopped on the side of the road, I happened to have service where we went off at. I was able to text photos of our car to our crew and let them know what had happened. And before we even got pulled out by sweep, they had already texted us and said that they were like, "Oh yeah, we've already got it fixed. Just make it back here. We'll get the car set up for you." So when we got back to service, crew got to work on the car. They were absolutely amazing. Did have to have all the fixes approved by a safety steward. But we got the car, kind of cobbled back well enough together to just go out and drive the last stage, which was actually the only stage we got to drive in full, flat out that day.
Yeah, so because of all the Red Crosses and our off, so many stages were canceled. The Saturday was just kind of a mess. But we did get to do waste management again. This time not at night, in the reverse configuration. Flat out, as flat out as we could, considering the condition of the car. But we did check the car out. There wasn't really any major damage. All the suspension was tight. Cosmetic damage on the door, which we got covered up. And so at that point, after the long weekend and all of the things that had gone wrong or right, depending on how you look at it, I decided it was time to put the suspension to bed, and I had decided to send it over the jump. So
yeah, he decided to send it through the whole stage, really, but we came around, I think it was like a right 3 or whatever, and there's a really long stretch before the jump, and he goes, "I know where we're at, I'm going for it." And there's a very long run up to the jump. I had a lot of time to just sit and think about how bad the landing was gonna feel. So I just sat back in my seat and prepared for takeoff. And we definitely sent it really hard over the jump. GPS speed on the camera says 76 miles an hour, which is by far the fastest we've ever hit a jump by a long shot. And
there's an interesting video out there of the landing that somebody took. There was certainly a bounce.
Yeah.
The front end landed pretty hard. We definitely felt that. But in the video, you can see the rear land and then bounce back up. And it was It's interesting to watch.
Yeah, there's definitely no dampening left in that suspension by that point. But yeah, if you watch, so we do have on our YouTube page the in-car of our jump and landing. You can hear me kind of grunting and groaning because the landing was not very smooth. It did kind of knock the wind out of me a little bit. So I got a little caught off guard by that. And so yeah, there's both in-car and out-of-car view of that jump. And there's also video of our crash, also up on our YouTube page as well. And so we landed the jump, and then after that, we were like, all right, well, we just got to finish. So we did back off a little, except for I think whatever in the finish, he slid that pretty hard.
Yeah, the very last turn into finish was a right 3, and I knew all the crew and spectators were kind of up on the mound there, and I just kind of yanked the brake as hard as I could and sent the car skidding sideways around that turn, hoping to make it look cool.
Yeah.
Maybe it looked cool. I didn't see any video, but...
Yeah, and I don't think anybody got any pictures or video.
Yeah.
At least
that car made it look like we went pretty wide, but...
Yeah.
There was lots of open space, so it was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. I actually cried as I called the last couple turns into finish. It was just kind of a really emotional finish for us. After everything we went through for the weekend, I was just so happy to finish that I was kind of crying as I called the last couple notes in to finish. So we got out and we got a team picture because this rally could not have finished without our crew. Our crew this time was the awesome Dan Downey of Downey Dirty Racing. He races his own E30. Kevin Brolin, his friend, and Alex Westby, who we met at the Southern Ohio Forest Rally. He was just there spectating and is a BMW lover and decided to just jump in and crew for us. They all did an amazing job. Nothing over the weekend fazed them. And it was just absolutely amazing to see them, kind of be like, get away from the car. We'll fix it. Just go eat a hot dog and relax. And so that was really, really amazing for us to see how much hard work they put. Also, special thank you to anyone who donated spare parts and things that we needed. I know Midwest Winkle gave us some metal zip ties. Josh Hickey of Pitch Black Motorsports gave us some extra gas when we ran out to make sure we could top off the car. Yeah, and there were a lot of folks named Kevin that weekend I noted that helped us out. Because Kevin of Midwest Winkle, Kevin Binkley, Kevin, our crew.
If you were there and your name was Kevin, you probably helped us in some way, so thank you.
Yeah, so thanks to all the Kevins. And we also want to thank, of course, our sponsors, Cooper Autoworks, Stevens Ranch, who built us this lovely table, and R1 Images, who couldn't come along with us to this rally, but I think he's hoping to come along and get some photos of the next, not the next rally, but LSPR.
Yeah, so we will be doing Show Me coming up here in a few weeks. We've got a little work to do on the car yet. I've already got some of the disassembly done and looked over the damage. Nothing's too bad. I think it's all fixable in the time frame we have. So we'll be doing Show Me. It's a one-day regional, and then we'll be getting ready for LSPR, last national event of the year.
Yeah. Oh, and I said October 8th on Show Me, but do you know what the date is?
No.
Okay, I'll put the date in the description below because I know I got the date wrong on that. And then, yeah, LSPR. Oh, the other thing is, so these pieces of wood here in front of the flowers aren't just for looks. These are pieces of the tree that we hit that were still in the car. And I thought I'd put them out on the table. We have a love-hate relationship with that tree. It saved us from falling off into the ditch, but also it hurt.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it did save us from going further off. And if we had missed the tree, I don't think we would have been able to get pulled out and keep going. So
yeah, I think it would have been a much worse off. So yeah, I'm really glad that we just finished this rally, and I'm really excited to get everything back together and get back on the road for Show Me. That's a tulip rally, so I won't have any notes to read. I'm gonna need to bring along some embroidery or knitting or something to do in the car for this tulip rally.
It'll be fun.
All right, well, thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.